I'm live. You're live. Congratulations for having made it another week. Um, you're not here, but that's okay. Let me explain what this is. People do show up. Generally, this has been once a week, but let me explain who I am a little bit. Um, let me make sure this is working. Hold on a second. Testing. Yeah, I'm testing. Yeah, it's working. Okay, good. Hello, Michael. So, for anybody who's new here, which wouldn't include Michael, not at all. Let me just see if I can give some context for what we do here. So I'm Jeremy Sherman, and I've lived a weird, you could say, unusual life, which I think of as cradle to grave, from the origins of life to our grave situation. A lot of it was spent as an activist, trying to save the world. Sobered up on that a bit, got more interested in understanding the world and my place in it. Fell in with this guy named Terrence Deacon, who's a Berkeley professor of neuroscience and biological anthropology. Jammed with him for 30 years, including a dog walk I just came back from with him. Hello. Let's see. Audio is good. I'm not new here. You are not new there. And hello, Rob. Good to see you, man. By the way, we are having our Sunday version, the live thing, tomorrow at 11 o'clock as well. I'll say more about that. In the meantime, just the context. So I love a lot of people, but actually I think that what I love more has been trying to hone my intuitions, trying to train my capacity for interpretation. Um, and part of that capacity would be admitting that I am not the authority on whether it's well tamed. That is, I can never talk about the progress I've made in training my intuitions, but I can say that it's a goal, and I seem to fuss over it a lot. How to shop among interpretations became a kind of a fundamental question for me, and part of that is this focus on how we get in trouble when we willfully misinterpret our situation for comfort and confidence. But part of it is also the origins of interpretation, how interpretation even starts in this universe. So I have more to say about that. But in the meantime, what I want to say is that this is a place where we get to shop among your interpretations, the ideas that have been on your mind this last week, or at all the things you're thinking about, and we do it in a different context from what I think is more natural or more popular. We're trying to get clear on the likely story, what's probably true, knowing that the pursuit of the likely story is what I'd call a fruitful exercise in futility. As I will never have the absolute last word likely story about how the world works, which is why I get a red flag when people start talking about how they have their truth or they have truth. I don't wield that word quite that way. But the pursuit of clearer, more likely stories is what I'm about here. So if you run an idea by us in this group, hello, Shirley, nice to have you back. If you run an idea by us, we're trying to check it out for its likeliness. But you say, well, I like the truth. I mean, why wouldn't I want to know what's likely? Doesn't the truth set you free? No, I don't actually believe that. I think I'm actually quite ambivalent about the truth. This work I do started with a mantra, which was no matter how hard I pursue the truth or chase the truth, it will never catch me. No matter how hard I chase the truth, it will never catch me. I am what I call an ambigamist. And it actually came out of something a girlfriend accused me of back in my 30s. She said, "You're like this. You give some, but you don't give it all." And that ends up being what I am. I have to recognize something I think is fundamental for life, which is, if you think about evolution, it's let the best plan win, and it damn well better be mine. There's evolution works by trial and error, but we are also trials in that trial and error process. As a trial, I have skin in that game. And so the what I really would like is confidence, um, and sometimes the truth is really disappointing to that appetite I have for confidence. In humans, that thing about let the best plan win and it better be mine could manifest as I just want the truth, but it better be flattering. So come to think of it, this morning I wrote, I feel lucky. I was talking to two academics today who wake up and they have to get right to their obligations. My life isn't like that. I get to get up, and if I have an idea, I get to write it up. And this was a simple idea, but gets right at what I'm talking about. "You'll taste right," the lion said, as he wrapped his jaws around my head. I swooned to earn the lion's grace. I thought he meant I had good taste. I like that kind of working with ideas is very fun for me. To figure out the shortest way the shortest, wittiest way to say something I think is true. So let's see. You want our ideas? You say, here's an idea I've been playing with. We may desperately need a Thanos to do what Thanos tries to do. Um, Good. I think I get what you're talking about. It's very closely related to dark enlightenment or dark MAGA. From what I know, I'm not a Marvel comics connoisseur, but from what I understand, Thanos recognizes that there's too many people, and so to save the Earth, he's going to destroy some large quantity of us. I think that's what's going on in that. That is exactly the Curtis Yarvin, J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel argument. Now, I can kind of see their point. I don't agree with it. I don't support it, but I have to be able to visit and put myself in those shoes and understand why they'd say that. I had a wonderful 2-hour dinner with a pro-Trump friend of mine and his wife, both of them very pro-Trump, and we talked it through. And yeah, we talk regularly, and I love it because I really do learn from the interactions, and I also learn from the occasional thing he says, but mostly I'm learning how people shop among interpretations and where this thing about comfort or confidence comes from. So the idea that we need someone to destroy, to get rid of the riffraff or the dead wood, or here's the thing that I get from the dark MAGA that I can kind of understand and see as a problem. One thing they say is that most people are not able to live in a democracy. These are people who are closer, you could say, to a herding species. They're education deprived, whatever. They don't have a capacity. They need the comfort of absolute law imposed on them. Because if they were allowed to vote or choose who was in power, they'd make a mess of it. They just don't have what it takes. I see that as a real issue. I see that democracy is harder to pull off than I used to think. Um, I don't. I mean, here's another example of it that's a little closer to home for me, which is good because for me to talk about the education deprived is borders on something I wouldn't tolerate from myself. But seems to me sometimes that we old farts shouldn't be allowed to vote. That at some point we should be retired from voting. We talk about an age at which someone is mature enough to vote, but we don't talk about an age at which you should cut it out because you got no skin in the future game. The game belongs to the younger folks. Get the fuck out of here. If you're not going to be around and all you're going to do is the kind of stuff that we get from these senior citizen psychopaths. It's like, what do I care? It's all a video game with me. I'll be dead. Rudy Giuliani actually says this. What do I care about honor or dignity? I'll be dead. So, no. So I kind of see what you're saying there, but I also, here's the connection I want to make to what I was talking about before this. I just want the truth, and it better be flattering. So if I said something like, if that you should go after, let's see, there we go. Let's say, here's an idea that I'm playing with. We may desperately need a Thanos to do what Thanos tries to do. A line like that, I got to be watching as I say things like that, or as I say anything that feels true to me. It's a feeling. And feelings mostly come from things that endorse or encourage our confidence. that make me swoon because it makes me feel like I've got good taste. That's one of the things I'm up against. I had a term for it this week. It's a kind of it's an aesthetic approach to morality, where if uh, things are moral or immoral depending on whether I like them or not. Um, rings true really means it feels true. Um, so that's been on my mind this morning. The Donald Trump AI Donald Trump I made this morning is about exactly this. It's like um, you notice that the Trumpists play like they are courageous, brave, hardworking heroes, but they talk like that. But it's actually totally a liberation. You don't see them working harder other than to say other people should work harder. So that would be like me saying, yeah, Thanos would be on my side. Thanos would pick me out. And the lion thinks I have good taste too. And he's not going to eat me because he thinks I have good taste when actually he's trying to eat me. Um, so just keep that in mind. Uh, there is this appetite that shows up in all of us, which is the world would be a whole lot easier and run much more smooth if my enemies disappeared, if we could just eliminate them, Thanos style. I mean, you read my traditional people's texts, and it's full of this. The Old Testament is full of God is to be praised because He smites my enemies. Um, so I don't want to go that way, and I also, but if he were actual option, he should go after Teal and Vance types first. But there's no Thanos. It's a fantasy, and it's a fantasy. I want to argue that we are all drawn to in our hell no moments. In those moments when we feel like, oh, hell no, fuck this fucking shit. The world should be operating more to my satisfaction. It's not. I'm going to throw a tantrum. The world owes me a better existence than this. That kind of confidence boost, very much the Thanos thing. But also notice that while he's not real, he's a fantasy. So are the people who destroy him. And we can play hero that way too. So, okay, so feel free to say more about that. So that we've got this wishful thinking. If only my enemies disappeared, and I want to build on that because that's actually where I was going to go. So this is great openings for thinking about certain things that, at least on my mind. So think about the ideal environment, and think about it in terms of this spectrum between deterministic and freedom. What would you actually want? What would be your ideal environment? Well, in a way, the whole free will is actually an oxymoron. What we're talking about is freedom to exercise our will. And what is our will? It's our determination. It's our deliberations, where we focus, where I decide, I want to get that woman in bed. I want to have $1 million. I want to save the world. So that's where you begin to focus and bring concentration into your ambitions, whatever your ambitions. I'm not talking about that yet. I'm just talking about what would a human being want? What they'd want to be able to express their aims. What would any organism want? They'd want to be able to get what they want. That's what a creature would want. That's what agency is about. And for that, you'd want an environment that was pliable, that was movable, that got out of your way. You want everything in the real world to be on rollers, on coasters. So you could just, if someone's in your way, there's no friction. You don't have to work hard to get it out of your way. If someone's on your way, you just kind of scoot them away like a shopping cart in a parking lot. That would be kind of ideal. But then again, there's a part of you that actually wants some traction. Like if I want to achieve my goals, I would like fate or a kind of determinism to be at my back. That is something to support me. What I'd really like is a ratchet. I'd like anything I want to do, shit gets out of my way, but I also have behind me something that keeps me from slipping. I would like to have determinism to keep me from falling. I mean, I don't want free fall into disappointment and disaster and all that. I want the wind at my back and nothing in my way ahead of me. And that way I could exercise my will. But my will is a little willy-nilly. I can change my mind about what I want. So the ideal environment would be a yes man environment that would change with me. There'd be no resistance when I change my mind. So I said, I wanted to get this girl, and she says, you can have me, you can have me, you can have me. And then I get her, and I realize I don't want her, and she doesn't give me a hard time about it. I just get to walk away. I get to ghost whatever I don't want to pursue. If I decided that I wanted a Ferrari and I pursue that Ferrari and then I change my mind and I actually want a Bugatti or whatever, I don't know cars. My son teases me. He says, "You're not a car person." He's right. Um, he's an auto mechanic. But anyway, I would like it to be flexible, but also deterministic. I'd like it to be at my back and supporting me, whatever my whims, and I want my whims to change willy-nilly. And and my willpower is a product of a few different things. First of all, I actually have to run on energy, physical energy. So, for example, what I add for breakfast and the coffee and all of that. But beyond that, there's something else I need, which is very much on my mind these days. I've been looking at what really drives human beings for a long time. I'm really trying to understand what's the core currency, and I would argue it's confidence. That in addition to the toast I had for breakfast, I actually need the mojo that would keep me motivated and moving forward in the world. Confidence would be really important as a fuel. A philosopher of some renown, I forget her first name, Nussbaum, just came out with a book about what people really want. And she said, meaningful lives. And I've been there. I've thought about that as what it is. I've thought about it as man isn't searching for meaning. He's man's search for feeling meaningful. But I think it's beneath that. I think I need affirmation. I need confirmation. I'm driven by confirmation bias. And when I say I mean you, me, and everybody. That's what we're doing in this conversation. This is Exceptionalist Anonymous. So I'm happy to talk about these impulses in me because I'm trying to understand us. I'm trying to actually overcome exceptionalism through introspection. What is introspection? It's actually kind of like looking at myself from the outside, which you can't get a narcissist to do. They can't look at, they self-idealize. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that oddly, if you spend some time looking at your own impulses, and then you look at other people's impulses and you start to feel like, oh no, this is a human thing. So anyway, what I'm saying is, my ideal would be that I would have plenty of mojo, confidence, and a world that was completely pliable, but where when I got a groove, it supported me. And when I was in a rut and I decided to move out of it, it let me go. That's what we would want from an environment. That's not what we get. We get an environment that gets in our way all the time, or a lot of the time. And we have to find a groove. And what if we find a groove and then we lose our groove? What if we decide very courageously to cultivate the mojo, the confidence to go to school to learn a skill that is, as soon as we graduate, eliminated by AI? I mean, that's rough. It's really rough on your confidence. So if you think about it in these ways, you recognize it becomes a little more plausible to imagine why we are the way we are. So, for example, I can look at the billionaires who are still trying to get more billions, or these sadonarcissistic confidence hoarders, people like Elon Musk or Trump or JD Vance, any of these people, Maduro. I don't care what they believe. It's this thing that you just need more power. And you can look at them and you say, why would they do that? It's one of the biggest mysteries that boggles our minds. I mean, these guys have more than enough. They could never use up all the money or power or any of that, nor do they seem rather careless in their use of the power. What's going on with them? Well, I can imagine. I mean, I wouldn't put it past me if I were them. Imagine that you spend your life, your early life, wondering whether you're going to get enough confidence, and you end up with a confidence windfall, which makes it, once you've got confidence, confidence builds on itself. You end up, the more confident you are, the more confident you can present yourself, and the more you could say cocky you are, the more you get confidence. It's like wealth or status. The more you've got, the more you can get, but also the more you could lose if you didn't have it. So you got the best thrill of your life is that the universe endorsed you by giving you $1 billion. And it's not just a thought, it's a feeling, what I call endorphment. It was one of the first words I coined, was endorphment, the endorphin rush, the pain-killing, doubt-killing rush of being endorsed. So the universe affirms, the universe confirms you, and you're high on that drug. What are you going to do? Have you ever been in a partnership where you were really thrilled by the affirmation you got by winning over this partner. And then a little later, you got a little restless. Like, okay, well, this is a bird in hand, but um, there's something more exciting about getting or acquiring an affirmation than there is about having it. I kind of take it for granted, this partner. Whether that's ever happened to you, you ever get restless. The way Philip Larkin describes it is he married her to keep her from getting away. Now she's there all day. And there's a kind of a restlessness. So if you've ever felt that, or know someone who's felt it, or know about how people who seem to be happily married end up still engaged in adultery. What I'm talking about is that the way in which getting addicted to a source of confidence is not that surprising. If it was easy for you to make billions of dollars because you'd already made billions of dollars, and it's a clear metric of your status, and you are elevated, but there's actually people who have more status than you, it's really quite understandable that humans would do this kind of indulgence in ever more uh, affirmation, ever more confirmation. And actually, this relates to something that Michael might be interested in. We've talked about it before. I'll just mention it again. If capitalism means cooperating and competing for real world finite resources, it's been going on since the origins of life. What's different about human capitalism is that it's done in the abstract, that I could have infinite money, that I could have infinite status, that I could have infinite power, infinite fame. Humans are dogged by both absolute finiteness and absolute infinity. That's a longer conversation, but it was the conversation I had with Terry this morning. There are no finite or closed systems in the physical world. Everything's a little leaky. There's no finiteness in that sense, and there's no infinite. But we humans with language can imagine the absolutely finite, the closed system. Like, for example, we have the term absolute zero for a temperature, so a system so insulated from everything external that you get the temperature down to zero. That is no motion, no more Brownian motion. It's impossible. You can't actually achieve it because every system's a little leaky. And at the other end, we can imagine the infinite. And that's what you get through, let's say, a cult like Trump's, is imagining that you have infinite good. Everything you want, you've got to the infinite. And I think that in a way they're playing a game that we played for a while on the left, which was if it sounded good, it was about us. We were kind, we were loving, we were hopeful, all that sort of stuff. And they just took it to the infinite. They said, if it sounds good, we have it to the infinite. If it sounds bad, you have it to the infinite. Didn't have to pay any attention to anything more than times infinity. I know you are, but what am I times infinity? I know I am, but what are you times infinity? That's all it comes down to. Wow. Okay, let's see. Universe needs depends. That's right. That's right. You're right. It's a little leaky. We're all a little leaky. Um, yeah, this is all because we've been Terry and I've been working out the difficult work it takes for language using selves to explain what selves are, because we tend to think about it um, in words, and words have they imply a kind of binariness, either or absolutes, excluded middle. That isn't actually the nature of the physical world. Um, it only occurred to me this morning. I've always loved this statement you get from both the Zen folks and also Plato says it. He's trying to cut the universe at its joints. That's what he's saying. But at the same time, the Buddhist said something like that, which is that if you knew exactly where the lines of distinction are in the physical world, then you would never have to sharpen your blade, and your blade would be able to cut everything at its proper joints. It's a great concept, but only this morning do I realize, no, you're not cutting with only with words can you cut at joints as exactly as that. I'll give you an example. I'm alive because we know in retrospect that I've been alive for a while, but whether I'm going to be alive tomorrow is an actuarial question. It's a question of all sorts of things that could be influences that impinge upon me. So my probability of staying alive is a little more open. It's more possibilistic or probabilistic than the certainty that I have been alive in the past. But so there's something, but try this out. What am I? that is alive. Okay, am I everything inside my skin? Not exactly. Um, for example, I could take in an oxygen molecule right now and then for whatever reason not end up absorbing it. Is it part of me or is it not part of me? It's kind of ambiguous. I mean, uh, so that's the fuzzy boundaries are because I'm actually not physically delineated the way that words would suggest. What am I? I am a constraint that has maintained itself in a lineage for 3.8 billion years. What do I mean by constraint? I'm a way that I focus myself on regenerating myself such that I remain alive. All of this is how my mind ties things together, but I have to watch out not to be too loose endy here. So let's ground it back in something real other than Jeremy stuff. Yes, Bayesian, exactly. That's what we're talking about. Um, and yet even Bayesian math is done with discrete numbers. Numbers are discrete. It's either this number or that number. So even if I end up with a population distribution, it's working from binaries back to analog. And there's a temptation, we think of it as just inherent in language, that would make us want to turn it all into absolute laws, absolute models, things like that, and that's just not how it works. It's squirrelier than that. Okay, let's see what we've got here. Snowy Owl retired. Let's see. Uh, oh, by the way, limited light. You know this joke. Um, what does oral sex with senior citizens taste like? Depends. Determination based on an environment that has more bandwidth than we can process is present, speaking for myself. So we have heuristics that compress reality into something that mismatches, yes or no. Okay, so I don't know what the yes or no means there exactly. It could mean we turn it into these kind of black and white yes and no's, or you could be asking whether I agree. I'll say I agree with you, and this is an interesting one. It's come up this week for me. So this Trump supporting friend of mine, he's really into Stephen Wolfram's work, and he's all about this kind of bounded rationality, that you can't know anything for sure because it's got more bandwidth, because there's more to the cluster flux we live in than we can possibly work with. And we have this in common, he and I, but there's a tapping out move that I hear in conversation. And I get it from him often enough. Uh, and I call him on it, or else I wouldn't feel comfortable mentioning it here. Um, Maybe I would. I don't know. I could be that kind of a dirty dog friend. I don't know. But anyway, I call it the doctrine of foregone inconclusion. Anybody can tap out of an uncomfortable conversation by saying, hey, it's just a guess, or nobody's perfect, or I never said I was perfect, which drives me fucking crazy when people say that stuff. It's a form of tapping out. So the doctrine of foregone inconclusion is usually a way to stop thinking. It's not, it's instead of doubting your idea, you say, yeah, it could be wrong. Uh, I was once set up on a date with the personal assistant for the guy who started the Rock and Roll Museum in Seattle, the guy who was the second in hand, Steve Ballmer. I think that's his name. And the date didn't go well. We weren't well matched. But part of it was her tendency to use that move. She kept on saying, I reserve the right to be wrong. It wasn't like she could consider whether she was wrong. It was a way of tapping out. I reserve the right to be wrong. Kind of a proud thing, like, yeah, I'm going to duck back into humility or humbleness, or I'll play humble through a humble brag, rather than actually contemplate whether my idea is full of shit. So that's an interesting use of it. But I do agree that determinism is that we are limited, that we have bounded rationality. Yeah, so that's just an interesting thing. And in general, anything I land on, I want to be able to flip it over and say, okay, yeah, I can see how recognizing that we don't have the bandwidth could be a really good, important move if you're going to be a fallibilist or an ironist like I am, but I also have to remember that that too can be used it can be used as a dodge, a way of tapping out, a way of not actually engaging and exploring. One way to think about it is you never can tell, but you'll die trying. That's kind of how I think about it. This is also why I'm an ironist, but I'm not, but not just the light side of irony. I'm a diurnist. I'm into this is a white knuckle ride that's also a hoot because of the guesswork, because of the bounded rationality, because there's more bandwidth to reality than any of us can countenance. Here's maybe a more positive way to say the same thing that works for me and has worked for me for 35 years or so. I realized at some point, no matter how much data I encompass, no matter how many facts or possibilities I take into account, there is always a potential that there's something outside of what I take into account that would change my mind. And I have to just live with that. That doesn't mean I don't fall into the doctrine of foregone conclusion, nor do I say, I have seen the light, I have found the truth, and there's nothing more to be considered. The kind of thing that religion seems to be saying, which is, this is the best interpretation possible, no need for further evidence. So living on that edge is interesting. Okay, let me see what we got here. Do you think that there's a physical world that exists separate from consciousness, that matter's appearance, existence doesn't depend on consciousness? Completely no. No, I mean, and fabulous that you bring it up. Thank you for that. No, not at all. Not at all. I work in science, and in science, the campaign is to find natural explanations for all natural phenomena. I looked up the etymology of God this week. It originally meant to invoke. So it's basically like pulling a wild card, trump card out of your butt. You invoke explanations that are not based in any, that there's no tagbacks on, because there's no evidence that points to it or away from it. And not just that there's no evidence now of it, but that there could never be, because it's supernatural. It's outside the natural realm. If you were ever going to work, if God existed and he told us by writing in the sky, the writing would be physical. So, yeah, you can always evoke this. And a lot of my work is dealing with scientists who still invoke the supernatural. And I just think it's a total crock. And that's what I'm arguing against. It's actually the Platonic move. It actually predates Plato. It starts with language. So imagine this. We talk about it as the God of the gaps. So lightning's a mystery to our ancestors. And someone says, well, there's a lightning maker. He's not here. He's not in this world. He's in another dimension. That's called the God of the gaps. It fills in the gaps. And at the same time, so that's a comfort from basically playing a wild card. No tag backs on it, because what are you going to, if I said, you're wrong, that's not God, you say, prove it. Okay, I could say to you, well, prove that he exists. And, at that point, we're at a stalemate because we have nothing to work from, no evidence to work from. And if you look at most of the theories of consciousness, they're playing that game. They're actually dualistic. There are two realms, the realm, and the prominent realm in science at present is the idea of information. So information is the stuff that's supposedly sort of always everywhere, and it's kind of material, but it's also not exactly material, and it's something that is everywhere, but it's also nowhere because there's just matter, but it's also just in some places. For example, it's in DNA. So DNA is a molecule, it's matter, but it also has this stuff inside of it because it's information bearing. Or my words, which are physical, but not really physical, they're kind of like in another realm, the realm of information. You see what I'm doing there? It's a dualistic move. We can do that with language till the cows come home. And we do it in different ways. And we debate which magical second realm is real. So, that's where you get all these holy wars between the people who say, no, my magical realm is real and yours is fake. So to me, that is not how to get at consciousness. And then that puts the burden on me to say, okay, well, then how are you going to explain consciousness in strictly physical terms? Now, first I have to make this distinction. I am not a materialist because I obviously not everything in the universe is matter, right? I mean, kind of obvious. If the universe were one solid block of marble and I was in it, then maybe I'd be a materialist. But actually, there's space between things, which means that there's congestion and there's flow. There's constraints on flow. There's because there's differences in space and time about where things are. It's not like we're in a block universe where everything is everywhere always. And even if we were in a block universe, the way that Einstein talks about it, you still have to explain change. That is, why are you here in the block universe as compared to there in the block universe? So, no, I'm a physicalist. I believe that I have to be able to explain my consciousness within nothing but the physical realm. And while many people who study consciousness talk about this as a hard problem, which is how to explain how if you just have billiard balls knocking around, how could you ever get the feeling of redness or the feeling of sadness or any of that sort of stuff? Because molecules don't have feeling. I think that's the made harder problem. The problem starts much earlier than consciousness. It starts with trying. Some things try, other things don't. Some things exist because they're durable. They're rock hard. This is durable, okay? But some things exist because they are not durable and yet they regenerate themselves. They try to regenerate themselves. So if I really want to explain consciousness, I have to start with that. And if I instead say, no, you're just dead billiard balls bouncing around, and how do you explain consciousness? No, I'm deliberately, you could say, almost over dramatizing the difficulty of explaining consciousness, this woo-woo magical stuff. Another thing I would say about it is that to explain consciousness, I have a theory. I made a video out of it recently. It's not my theory. Terry came up with it. He's a neuroscientist. He'd know more about this shit than I do. But I think it's a brilliant theory that does help explain consciousness. Now, we have to get clear on what we mean by consciousness. Consciousness is often treated as if it's the conceptual capacity that only humans have. That is a conscious self-awareness by which I could come up with the story of what I am, self-consciousness, that kind of thing. But actually, when we're talking about consciousness, what we're actually talking about is what we call qualia, the feeling of things. The feeling of anxiety when something doesn't go my way, the feeling of disappointment, the feeling of loss of confidence. Those would all be, or the feeling of hunger, or thirstiness, or any of those things, or illness, any of those things. How do you explain that stuff? I could get into it here. I would if someone asked for it. I could also send you this video I made about it. I'm going to put up the video right now. It's a short video that makes quite intuitive what we're talking about here, what I'm talking about here, and actually has to do, believe it or not, with slow pizza delivery. Here it is. Your mind is not what you think. Okay. I make it intuitive that way. Here comes the video. Just check it out if you feel like it. It's a strictly physical explanation for what consciousness is as an overlay on top of vegetative sentience, which is what I have in common with all other organisms, which is I'm trying to stay alive. That is my physical activity to keep my body going. Then there's my qualia or emotional sentience. And then on top of there's all this stuff I do with language, that we do with language. And so notice that what I'm trying to explain is I'm a self trying to explain selves. I'm trying to explain trying. I'm trying to come up with the best interpretation of how life pursues better interpretations. It's like the natural history of wising up. But I'm doing it through language, which makes it very difficult to get it straight because we have this tendency to think that language can chop the universe at its joints, and then to think that the universe is actually jointed the way that language is, and it's not, or the way that math is, and it's not. Okay, so anyway, all of that, I will remind you, thank you for being here, by the way, that I am, tomorrow is the same as this, only live, where you get to talk at me and interrupt me and say, Jeremy, you ignorant slut, and anything you want to say. We actually get to talk face to face. That's at 11 o'clock California time tomorrow. It'll be at that email address, at that Google Meet address I just gave you. There it is again. So there's twice on that. The video on consciousness, Um, yeah, this guy just did a survey of theories of consciousness, and there's over 230. And he ends up coming up with it. So the guy who does this whole interviewing thing lands right back in supernatural spiritualism, the kind of argument that it's a completely separate realm, which to me is not even wrong. And since he's come up with these theories, what they're also saying is these are all, it turns out that most theories of consciousness are not even testable. As you can't even, you couldn't prove them right or wrong. Because why? Because you're dealing with this wild card, trump card, supernatural realm. Whether you're doing it by talking about soul or spirit, or you're talking about consciousness itself as another realm, or whether you're talking about how it comes out of quantum mechanics, none of that is actually testable. And yet the theory I posed a simple version of here, yeah, the heart problem is actually pretty limp. I like that. Thank you, Michael. I like that. Um, uh, is testable, and we actually have some neuroscientists on our team who are testing it these days. Um, let's see. Okay, let me see where we are here. So they're saying no, no. Thank you for asking. Please understand. When I say no, it's not. I'm not saying. I'm saying thank you for asking, and no, that would be a understandable interpretation, but that is not what I'm saying. No, the only realm is the physical realm. And I have to be able to explain how consciousness emerges within nothing but the physical realm. But to do that, I have to actually first explain how trying emerges within nothing but the physical realm. So notice how the the Cliff Note Darwinism that you probably know and I know and relish, it was where I first got interested in all this stuff, is actually doing the same two realm bullshit that you get from spirit and religion. So while I am grateful to Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and Dan Dennett and all those folks for waking us up in a way, I also think that they're not as smart as they think they are, because they basically are saying, no, your second realm is bullshit, but mine is not. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about. The Cliff Note Darwinism says that all of life is explained by two things: DNA, which is a special kind of molecule that contains information or even a blueprint, and natural selection, which is kind of like a secondary realm. It's almost like God picking which animals go on Noah's Ark. And both of those are fudge moves. DNA is a molecule. If you put it on the table by itself, it's like snot, but it's not alive. It's not full of microbes. It's just chemical. It's just some goo. Okay, so what makes it special? Well, let's say it contains information. Well, what is information? Well, there's two versions of what information is, most basically. Um, so one version of information is called Shannonian information. It's where we get the concept of bits and bytes. So if I have a coin and I flip it, before I flip it, there's two possibilities. After I flip it, there's one actuality. The reduction from two possibilities to one actuality is considered a bit of information. It's a measurement of something. But notice that you could measure anything that way. For example, on a sterile planet somewhere in the universe, there's a rock that could have fallen this way or that way. It falls this way in gravity. Okay, is that information? Well, yeah, from a Shannonian perspective, it is. Shannon was an engineer. He was working at Bell Labs, and he needed to figure out stuff about bandwidth, and that's what bits came from. And all of computation is really reliant on that notion. But that's not what we mostly mean by information. Information, the coin flip could be deciding whether I move away or stay here, or whether I try this kind of drug treatment or that kind of drug treatment for my cancer, for my terminal cancer, which I don't have, by the way. Or it could be, do you want fries with that? Yes or no. Or it could be whether a pebble in my backyard is on that side or that side of something. I don't care. I don't need to know. So we measure binary bits of information, let's say on a hard drive, but the hard drive could be filled with your life's work, or it could be filled with spam. And we don't make that distinction. So the other way we use information is about something for someone who's trying to do something. And for that, you actually need interpretation. So from my perspective, anything in the universe could become information. It only becomes information when some trying being, a being trying to do something, interprets it as useful for their trying. So those two definitions are in there, but what you can do with Darwinism, and I hear this from high-level biologists. I mean, there's a guy at Harvard named David Haig. He's completely sloppy about this difference, to where he thinks that a photoelectric cell is conscious. Um, uh, but but that difference makes an important difference. And notice what that means about dualism. I cannot simply say that the universe is full of information. I have to explain how interpretation could ever begin in a universe that doesn't have it. And it doesn't begin as a property like consciousness. There is no property consciousness. You have your subjective consciousness, I have mine. We can try to communicate and get a sense of each other's consciousness, but there's not some universal shit called consciousness that gets poured into matter and turns it alive. That's what I'm trying to work against. So imagine my vehemence. You don't have to. Here it is. I'm really passionate about this thing where I don't get to just pull out my butt some other realm and say, well, there's information and that makes all the difference, or there's spirit, or there's soul, or there's God's will, or God's love, or none of that stuff. Naming is not explaining. I have to explain. And that's what I love about Terry, is he's just completely, we're not interested in that game where we do battle our supernatural realm against someone else's supernatural realm. It's really fun to actually roll up your sleeves and say, okay, let's try to figure out what are selves in trying, and how did they start within nothing but physical chemistry. Okay. Yes, I love they're not even wrong. I use it sometimes directly with someone, and that's a little offensive when I tell my Trump supporting friend, you're not even wrong. I see if I get invited back. One 8-bit voter decides red party. Another more fortunate voter with 10-bit decides blue party. Decisions in 64. Got it. I think you might be playing. Let me see if it's the same point. Let's see. Yeah. So Snowy Owl retired. I want. This is let's play with this for a minute, and then we're gonna. Let's see. I'm probably skipping over a few things, but I will come back to them. And also, FJ Deluxe. We're going to come back to it because I think you're asking a follow-up question or making a follow-up challenge, and thank you for that. I want to talk about that. Yeah, Dennett did pass away. I had conversations with him. He was interesting about Terry's work. Terry, he thinks he was a computationalist who thought that trying or selfhood was a figment of the imagination. He danced on either side of this. He was another equivocator. He was a little bit like the Harvard guy David Haig, but he also was extremely dismissive of anybody who tried to figure out what selves are, since he thought they were a figment. Now, the question you should ask a Dan Dennett is, figment to whom? The self is a figment? Figment to who? Chemicals don't have figments. Nothing tricks chemicals because they're not trying to do anything. But anyway, let's see. But he really respected Terry's work. So he said, yeah, these are romantic ideas. That is, that there actually is such a thing as selfhood, and that you're not just another computer that succeeded by trial and error in this world. He's totally into the dualistic version. It's crypto-dualism. It's crypto-Cartesianism. You deny that you have a second world, and then you talk about information, or you talk about software running on hardware. A lot of cognitive science talks like that. That's dualism. What is software? It's information or an algorithm. What is an algorithm? Well, it's something that's not exactly physical, but it's physically manifested. Anyway, let me see. I am not a 8-bit or a 10-bit voter. I'm a living being. So we'd have to talk about the transition. The computer metaphors are everywhere these days, and I wince when people talk about hardwiring. It's the engineering model, and that's where you get the dualism. The dualism that you can say originates with God is I look at something mysterious in the world and I say, okay, well, I'm going to assume that there's something out there that engineered it. And I'm going to try to reverse engineer. I'm going to figure out how I would make it if I were them. If I were God, what would I do? And I come up with some simplistic model where I say, well, God has this shit called spirit and he pours it into matter and it makes stuff come along. So we can talk about God's power, but we never actually work out the physicality of how that would even work. And the same problem with software and hardware. That's the idea of software and hardware is Descartes' idea. He says there's two realms. He says there's a realm of the physical, what he called res extensia, the three-dimensional realm, and then there's the realm of consciousness. And consciousness somehow pours into matter and makes it conscious. Okay, that's not actually working out the physicality of it. I have to work out the physicality of how consciousness could emerge, and I don't get to pour it in as if I'm an engineer outside making it. Boy, am I on a thing there. Let me see if I can ground myself again. Thank you for being here. Ozzy, why do you say you know the physical realm is the only realm when the only experience anyone ever has is consciousness and all experiments on a physical realm took place inside consciousness? Well, thank you for asking. And here's my answer. I could pose a rhetorical question back to you. But you are in a camp that is quite popular. It's called phenomenology. I'm not a phenomenologist. It's the world where you get people who are saying, look, all we know for real is our qualia. So let's assume there's nothing else besides qualia. The founder of this kind of approach, phenomenology, was a guy named Bishop Berkeley. I live in a town that was named after him. And I'll make your argument for you. But I disagree with it, but I can certainly make it by telling you what Berkeley said. He's operating on an assumption we call Occam's razor, which is that you shouldn't you don't add elements you don't need in order to explain stuff. And he says, okay, imagine you got two possibilities. One is that you've got experience of the real world. So there's your consciousness, your experience of it, and there's the real world. And the other version of it is you just have your experience. There's no real world. They both explain the same stuff. Whether there is a rock that I stub my toe on, or I just experience the stubbing of my toe, they're the same. It's the same situation either way. So why would you assume a physical world? So that's close to the phenomenological argument you are making with your rhetorical question here. You were also smuggling in some words I don't quite buy. So let me just tap on a couple of those. The physical realm took place inside consciousness. Took place inside. That's a what we call that's in space and time. Took place inside. Inside, outside, those are physical metaphors. So even in your attempts to deny the physical or to question the physical, you're employing physical metaphors. Now, you probably know about George Lakoff. George Lakoff is a phenomenologist. You got to know about these guys if you want to play there. And more power to you. In this line of work, it's all truth emergent from disagreements among friends. I have tons of phenomenological friends, and we do tease each other some. They say, Jeremy, you ignorant slut, and I say, I don't know if you know that line. It's from Dan Aykroyd said it to Jane Curtin in the early years of Saturday Night Live. But we tease each other, and we don't move each other much, but we feel very free to disagree with each other. So it's not like I'm prejudiced against the character of a phenomenologist. I am arguing against phenomenology. So George Lakoff makes the argument. This is how he got famous. He's a guy in Berkeley, actually, so I know him. We've had conversations. We had a dinner together once in which we fought mercilessly, and I had a delightful time, and I think he did too. Though he did come away thinking I was an ignorant slut. But anyway, he says we can't help. So just get a little bit of the lineage here. You got Berkeley, who makes this argument. And then you've got John Locke, and then you've got Kant, who was originally making an argument closer to what I believe, and then he was moved off it by these arguments. And so Kant is talking about we could never know reality truly because we're biased by our own interpretation. That is, conscience makes it impossible to ever discover the din in sich, the thing itself. So he goes out that way. Anyway. What I want to say, though, is Lakoff argues we cannot help but use these physical metaphors. He's arguing because we start out as dealing with the physical realm. And therefore, I can't help but, for example, saying the metaphor that you took the phenomenological path and I'm taking a different path, what I would call an emergentist path, a non-dualistic emergentist path. That's talk about paths. Where did we get that from? We got that from the logistics of walking around. And then he goes on to make a phenomenological argument, which is because of the bias we have towards physical metaphors, we'll never know the reality. And even he goes so far as to say sometimes, because they're tainted by our physical biases, the metaphors we live by was the name of the first book. We're probably wrong about reality. But anyway, you're in a realm like that, and I'm saying, well, actually, I don't care whether there's a physical reality. All I won't care is that there's one realm. And it's a realm in which I will either live or die. And so call it physical if you want, or call it the one realm. Here's one way to think about it. Whether there is that rock I stubbed my toe on and tripped on and broke my head and died from, whether that rock exists or is just an experience, doesn't matter to me. I still don't want to die. And I want to explain how it is that I am a physical phenomena that doesn't want to die and has also accumulated so trees don't want to die either, but they don't feel it and they don't think about it. Single cell organisms, you can tell from their work, they don't want to die. The things they do, the focus they get, how they channel energy into work that regenerates them, it's quite apparent they are not indifferent to their own deaths. Okay, so I notice that that's part of my experience. We could call it consciousness if you want. We could say that it's an interaction with stuff, or you could just say that there are reliable habits in the universe that I want to be well fitted to if I don't want to die. From my perspective, the only thing that all organisms have in common, the only thing you learn from evolution is adapt to reality or die. Okay, so if you want to believe that consciousness is all there is and there is no physical reality, if you go that route, you can say the same thing, which is have the experiences that keep you conscious, not the ones that don't. Apparently you want that. I think you want that. Suicidal people don't. But if you're trying to have the experiences that are good for your health, not the ones that are bad for your health, that's already evidence of fuck reality. Who cares whether there's reality? All I know is that I'm interacting with habits, reliable habits, that I want to interact with in fitted ways so I can take advantage of the opportunities and avoid the threats. Whether it's reality or not may not be interesting to you. But to me, the point is, I am not going to claim consciousness is the only realm. That's absurd. You may feel that way, and I'm not going to say, and you don't have to buy my argument that the physical realm is the only realm, but I will say this. I'm not going to go dualistic. I'm not going to allow myself to throw in some fudge factor from another imaginable realm. Everybody can do that, and most of us do. I'm saying that's a different challenge that's an easier game than the one I want to play. It's basically one version of it. I've coined the term in recent weeks, bingoism, which is that you connect a few dots and you draw a conclusion and you say bingo. So I'm actually trying to stick with a harder problem, and I will mention that, which is that I'm going to assume only one realm, and I have to be explained consciousness out of it. And I will argue this as well, which is that though there are researchers who I know who want to say that rocks are conscious, a little less conscious than us, but or conscious below a level we can see, and that um, uh, that's uh, that's not the realm I'm going with. I'm saying that some things try and some things don't. Rocks exist by durability. I do not exist by durability. If I died today, 10 minutes, 15 minutes after I die, 20 minutes after I die, I am so degenerated that I couldn't live again. I may have the figures off, they've gotten better, if I got to the doctor all right and all that, but the decay happens really rapidly with me. I am not existing by durability. I am a constraint that regenerates the constraint I am. I'm a constraint that channels energy into work, into trying, into effort, that regenerates the constraint I am so I can try it again tomorrow. And that's true from one realm, is what I'm saying. Wow. It wasn't okay. I just gave you the answer. It was it. So here, let me say this about that. You may not have thought it was a rhetorical question. I hope you can kind of see, though, that a lot of the questions are on the edge of rhetorical. And what I want to say is what you can count on from me, this is my pledge to you, is if you bring up a rhetorical question or anything that smells a little rhetorical, I'll treat it as a real question, which is what I just did and why I gave you the answer I did. Feel free to ignore it, deny it, disagree with it. Come and meet me tomorrow at this place tomorrow. We'd have a great time talking about this. I love that. Join me tomorrow there if you got time at 11 o'clock to join me there, and we can have this conversation. And it'll be a better conversation because I won't be just reading your text. You'll be able to say, Jeremy, you ignorant slut, or Jeremy, you ignorant slut. I'm not asking rhetorical questions. I love it. I love this kind of stuff. I am. It turns out my friend, the Greek scholar, has told me, the gentle Greek scholar who's now 87, told me that I would be described as eristic. Eristic means I love a good debate. I roll up my sleeves for it. And then a couple of days later, I discovered a new word that I hadn't known before, amathia, which is another Greek word. And amathia is what psychologists these days call smart idiocy. That is, it's basically what the Greeks called sophism, which is you're really smart, really good critical thinker for defending whatever you want to believe. And I'm not saying that about anybody here, but I am saying I am eristic. I love a good debate because I recognize that people are not actually very good at being receptive to ideas that disappoint, that challenge our mojo. Remember how I described it earlier? I just want the truth, but it better be affirming or flattering. Let the best plan win, and it better be mine. I recognize that in me. I get really disappointed if I find out that I've been wrong about something. I don't like it. I'm not I'm not feigning receptivity or open-mindedness as if I am unbiased by my own appetites to believe certain things. But I do think that's why we need in the touchy 2020s, we need to be much kinder to each other and much more honest with each other. We need to be more blunt and more tactful. And playing with that relationship is part of what I'm doing here. It's part of what's going on when I'm teasing and when I'm inviting you to tease me back, is that I want it to feel really warm and really pugilistic, where we run these ideas by each other and truth emergent from disagreements among friends. Okay, let's see. Let's see. That filtered through. Let's see. It was a rhetorical question. You said you. So please understand my answer if you didn't feel like you got it. My answer is I don't care whether you call that realm consciousness or physical. I'm glad to grant that there's not really a difference between experience with a reality and experience without one. I'll grant Berkeley's point. But my question is nonetheless, how are you going to explain consciousness emergent within one realm? So let me give you this broader definition of the answer so you know where you're playing. Because I don't know what often happens, what happened for me, what happens for lots of people, is we find some thought that feels really good to us, in part because it makes us feel like a genius. Richard Dawkins was this for me. And it was interesting because the New York Times described his book, The Selfish Gene, as making every reader feel like a genius. And then we plug away with it, and then we end up with a disappointment, which is we discover that we're in one camp and that there are other camps. Okay, so try this out. I have a video about it too. I might be able to put it up here if I can find it. It's short and gets right to it. But here's the question. I'm going to drop out the word consciousness for now and put in the word trying. What is trying and how did it start? There are people who say, well, there's only one realm and nothing is trying in that realm. So these are the materialists who say atoms aren't trying and therefore nothing is trying. So know this camp. It's not your camp. The next one's going to be your camp. But this camp is called material eliminativists. They eliminate the concept of trying or telos or goal or end-directed behavior. They say it doesn't exist. I know people who are like this. They say, like Dennett, they say trying is a figment of your imagination. Selves and trying are figments of your imagination. Because when you think about it, all there is matter. And therefore, since matter isn't trying, nothing could try. Then there are the people who are close to the phenomenologists. These are called panpsychists. And they say there is only one realm. And since there is consciousness in everything. So there's only the conscious realm. That'd be panpsychism. There might be, okay, so you might fall into that camp. Then there's a camp called the dualist emergentists. And they say, well, there's not only one realm, there's two realms. And trying begins when God's spirit or soul or vital energy or information enters into matter. So that's where you would get the difference, that it's something added from outside of it. And then you have the people who say none of the above and the people who say all of the above. So the people who say none of the above are called Mysterians. They say it's not, we could never know. It's a mystery. So they reject all of those answers that I just gave, the three answers I just gave. And then all of the above people are the poetic naturalists. They would use a line like reality happens inside consciousness. That is, they're doing a kind of poetry where they dance between it's a mystery, everything's conscious, nothing's conscious. It's equivocating. It's a dance around. So, for example, if someone says, well, there's mind and then there's brain, and those are just two different aspects of the same thing. And you can look at it either way, and it's cool whichever way you look at it. That's poetic naturalism. So what you got is nothing's conscious, everything's conscious, we can't know, or whatever. And and you also got the ones who say that, yeah, consciousness is something that only some things have, but it's added from a separate realm. And all I want to say is I'm from the sixth group, which says, no, there's only one realm, and not everything's conscious. So I have to explain how consciousness emerges from non-consciousness. And I do that. That's what my work's about. And we have answers. You don't have to like them, but we have answers. They could be full of shit, but they are attempts to answer that question, how you'd ever get selves and trying emergent within nothing but one realm. Oh, okay. Gnomes, jingoists, bingoists. That's right. Well, that entire movement, the Trumpists are nothing but jingoists, bingoists, right? I mean, that's what's going on there. But Journey's music is no longer life. Life is a journey. Okay. Oh, you guys. All right, let's go back to this. You said you were willing to take the position that the physical realm is the only realm. Fine. But have you seen or researched any reason to believe? I don't think you're listening to me. I don't think you've heard me anyway. Yeah, I have seen research on it. Um, and I've seen research that counters it. So there's a kind of a proud dualism that says, science can't explain everything. So I'm going to posit this other realm. Let me try this out on you. Have you noticed how much of your kind of talk there is in this world that completely disagrees with you? Have you noticed that anybody who pulls out of their consciousness another separate realm and either calls it the second realm or claims it's the only realm, how much disagreement there is among you guys? I mean, just try this out. There's 4,500 different religions. No, what is it? Yeah, 45. Yeah, there's 5,000 different religions in the world, all of them uh, claiming a second realm of consciousness that either interacts with the physical realm or claiming it's the only realm. God's spirit is all there is. You could have people like the Cathars, for example. Cathars are really interesting. It's where we get the term bugger for anal sex. So I'll mention them in just a second. But have you noticed how much of them disagree? Have you noticed that there are 45,000 different Christian sects? So if you want to pull out some magical other realm that has that there can be no evidence for other than your intuition, notice that you have to join the club and get in line because everybody and their brother thinks that way. It's actually not special or unique. And the fact that you've got one that makes you enthusiastic doesn't actually speak anything to whether you're onto something or not, because there's all sorts of people with all sorts of different beliefs about this magical other realm or the only realm. And so, yeah, you got a problem with too much intuitive phenomenological evidence. I'm working from the assumption that the physical realm is more realistic. And not only that, I want to say you are too. You can talk this way, but have you ever taken an airplane flight somewhere? Yeah, have you ever been on a plane? If you have been on a plane or been to the doctor, you actually recognize that there's a physical realm that is better handled by people who are actually paying attention to physics than by people who are paying attention to consciousness being all there is. It's back to the rock that stubs my toe. Whether it exists or not, it's one realm where I am conscious and the rock is not. This is my position on it. You don't have to buy it, but that's what it is. Um, yeah, you're not listening, my friend. No, that's not how it works here. You don't get to simply put the burden of proof on me, especially because you're working in the physical realm, sweetheart. I mean, even if you die, the computer you're working on will still exist. It's not like as soon as you die, the universe disappears. Now, I should tell you what Berkeley's answer to this was, because he faced exactly that same problem. And I am not speaking to you anymore because I don't actually think you're listening to me. You're just saying, prove it, prove it. So what I'm talking about is that anybody who's actually interested in these questions, listen to what Berkeley says about this. So there's this question, okay, does that mean if there's no reality, there's only conscious experience? Remember, he's making this argument. If there's only conscious experience, then what happens when you go to sleep or not home? I mean, what happens where's your wife when you're out at work? Does she disappear? Well, Berkeley's version of it was perfectly appropriate to his era. He said, no, God's watching everything. So as long as God is witness to it, then it exists. In a way, all there is God's consciousness, which is, remember, it's a dualistic thing, and your consciousness. That's the only realm. You can make these arguments. You know what? Here's what it is. It's not interesting to me. There are a bunch of philosophers who are basically, let me try this out with you. Remember, I got this question. I'm a self trying to figure out what a self is, or I'm a consciousness trying to figure out what consciousness is. Well, that's me trying to eat my mouth. So there are three basic moves people make with this thing. The first one is the Mysterian one. They throw up their hands and say, well, that's like trying to eat your mouth. It's impossible. You can't do it. Okay. For a self to try to understand a self, the problem is you're going to be biased by your selfhood in your understanding of a self. So that's one move. The second move is closer to what I'm getting from Dolux, which is, well, you can start anywhere. Just flail. You come up with a dualistic answer, which is there's consciousness because there's consciousness, and that's all there is. And there's no the physical is not real. It's just a figment. A figment to whom is a real question. But never mind. And let's roll up our sleeves. I mean, the number of conferences I go to where people are dueling about their dualistic versions of things. So my supernatural is better than yours, and they're having fun because no one can prove anybody wrong. That's the excitement of it. And what I'm trying is something different, which is I'm saying, well, yeah, it is a problem eating your own mouth. So I want to start with the minimal understanding of reality and see if I can explain how selves emerge from that. So I have to recognize that I'm a self and I do come with biases, but I can start with a minimal one. It's like rolling up your sleeve. So the first one is they throw up their hands and say, can't do it. Selves-explaining selves is like, you can't, it's like eating your own mouth. You can't do it. The second people say, well, let's start wherever we want. You start here, I'll start there. We'll have a nice, fun fight. And what's nice about it is that we both feel like heroes for, like geniuses for saying this thing. The consciousness is all there is and whatever. And then we duel it out and prove me wrong, prove me wrong. The thing is that nobody will be able to prove anybody wrong. And that's the fun of it. We get to have a career in academics. We get to go to conferences and get to speak, and we listen to each other, and we can feel free to disagree, and nobody has to worry about being proven wrong. And the approach I'm taking is different. I'm saying, well, we have to roll up our sleeves. We have to start with a minimal one universe. And I have to explain everything up from that. That's where I play. You don't have to play there at all. By the way, if you want to find people who agree with you that consciousness is all there is and the physical realm is just a figment, I could point you to plenty of researchers who talk like that and will make you feel grand for having discovered the truth. There's plenty of them out there. I'm just the wrong guy for that. Because I'm saying, no, actually, it's a really interesting question. How does mattering emerge within the physical world, within mattering? How do currencies, things we value, whether they be food or oxygen or water or whatever, carbon dioxide, how those currencies become a value to selves in a world that's otherwise comprised of physical currents, flows and congestions, that kind of thing. That's where I play. And you don't have to agree with it, but that's where I play. And I'm not really interested in the debates, either of the two debates. So there are people, I go to conferences with people who say, we can't know this. It's emergent in a way that we can't explain. They're mysterious. And I say, that's fine. You're excused from the table. No one's holding you here. If you don't want to deal with this question, go deal with it, whatever else interests you. And I go to these conferences where people are having a grand old time. An example would be a couple of years ago, I went to a conference. The conference where I actually realized this, it was in Russia. It was in Moscow. It was the annual Biosemiotics Conference. And I did my presentation. Other people did their presentation. Semiotics is about how significance happens, how interpretation happens. And we had a grand old time. And I realized halfway through, wow, some of the fun is the safety. It's like you're swimming with water rings. Nobody can dunk you because this is a group where they simply assume information, and therefore they have their second realm. And everybody presents their model, and they all applaud, and they disagree, but the models are just models. Okay, so let's see. I'm only interested in what's proven. No, by the way, I got to tell you this, my friend. Scientists never talk about proven. We don't. That's a myth. You are misunderstanding what science is about. Science never proves anything. It comes up with best guesses so far to be beaten by better guesses. It's fundamentally fallibilist. And I could get into a deep reason why this is the ungrounded grounding in which reality actually happens. I could make an argument for that, but this is about proof. What is that? I love that you bring it up because I think it comes full circle to where I started. Confidence. What consciousness wants is confidence. And you get confidence by pretending that you've proven something. And you get confidence by saying, he didn't prove it, so prove it. That's not how reality works. Whether you call it consciousness or not, have you noticed that you can feel like something is proven, that it's a certainty, and then it turns out not to be? Have you ever been in a relationship that you thought was going great, and then the rug gets pulled out from under you? Have you ever noticed that reality keeps on pulling the rug out from under itself or under us? So I think the appetite for proof, which I get all the time from Trumpists, prove it, is an appetite for confidence that you cannot have. You can claim to have it, but you don't earn it. No one earns absolute confidence. From my perspective, I have to live on the edge of doubt. If I don't want to be an asshole who pretends he's proven that he's right about things, I have to expect some anxiety. So when someone says, I only interested in what's proven, notice what confidence strutting that is. What a little, like, I'm the realist, and anybody who disagrees with me is unrealistic because I'm only interested in what's proven. Not my style, and I'm willing to give you shit about it. I'm sorry. Yeah, prove me wrong. I had that out with the guy with my Trump friend. He quoted that to me. I said, are you fucking kidding? You know what proves things, and only partly? The future. You think we can logic this out to where you're proven wrong? What do you want? Do you want an intellectual WWF? Are you trying to do lucha libre, the Mexican version of WWF, with rhetoric? Jerk off elsewhere. That's not interesting. If you want to speculate with me and place your bets and place them honestly, and then admit to when the future proves us wrong, I'm happy to do that. But this prove me wrong strutting, it's a version of wanking. So anyway, that's me. Disproving is a form of proving. You don't really probably have much background, I'm guessing, in scientific methodology. If you like, my friend, I would be happy to send you a book as audio that would help you start to see a more sobering perspective on the challenge of what counts as science. You'd have to, it would be a great introduction to some of the bigger thinkers in it, including Karl Popper, who deals directly with this question. So I hear your strut. I don't know who you are, but I think we've seen each other before. We've had good conversations, I think. But here it sounds like you got a head full of you've got your commitments, and my counterexamples to you don't seem to interest you much. And so that's fine with me. I find I suffer bouts of indigestion while others have answers where I've got a question. I'm still reading books on scientific methodology because I don't think I've got it as pat as you seem to think you do. You don't understand fallibilism. It's fine if you think that it's proven one way or another, once and for all. The realm that claims provenness like that is the realm of religion. Notice this difference. Religion says we have the best interpretation possible. No need for further evidence. And why would that sell? For the confidence. That's why it would be so attractive. I'm going to pull up a quote that deals with this. Science is a counter to that. It says this is best interpretation so far to be beaten by other interpretations. And it does it through exactly what Hume was talking about when he says the truth emerges from disagreements among friends. Let me try this out. The mass appeal of religious piety can't possibly be the allure of self-sacrifice. It must be instead the advantages of high horse status from which to moralize and self-justify. I'd probably rewrite that a little bit if I was to say it again. I said it the other night, stoned, probably. But what I'm saying is, when you think about religion, and which is in the same realm as proven, once and for all, it's proven. If you think about religion, what it's doing, when it says it's proven you must follow these 621 laws of the Old Testament, or you must sacrifice this way or that. If you read original New Testament stuff about how always err on the side of accommodating others, you know how costly it is to accommodate others? That can't possibly be why people lust to belong to a religion. Why would you jump on born again? so that you can make all those sacrifices? I don't buy it at all. The reason why you'd want to claim you have the truth once and for all is that you can police other people, so that you can lord it over others by humbling yourself before your Lord or your idea. It doesn't matter whether the idea is religious, spiritual, philosophical. I know atheists who do this. Prove me wrong. And I'm just saying, to come full circle, what I'm saying is, it's so fundamental for me. Philosophy is a weird name for this pursuit. It means love of wisdom. It should be called sophology. It's the study of the emergence and nature of wisdom. But instead it's called philosophy, which is the love of wisdom. And I swear, I've never met a fool who didn't claim to love wisdom. There's any asshole can claim they love wisdom. So what is it actually talking about? For a long time, I just thought, what a bogus name, what a problematic, what a stillbirth way to start a topic of research, is to say, we're the lovers of wisdom. Well, what I think it means is you have to love wisdom more than you love your own confidence. You have to be willing to look squarely at the one realm in which we occupy, and not posit confidence-inducing wildcard trump cards like God's love or consciousness out of the blue, like it's the only thing that exists, and it's a thing. It's a thing somehow, but a non-thing thingy because there's no physical realm or something like that. You gotta love trying to figure out what the actual fuck is going on more than you love whatever idea made you feel like a genius and got you high on it. One way to do this is to ask, this would be a shop talk question. So no, I don't buy your idea that consciousness is all there is and there's no reality, but I can shop talk with you. And I'll tell you, I will end this with a shop talk I did with it was a really interesting exchange. I could ask you, what do you get personally from believing this? And you could ask me the same. What do I get personally from believing you're wrong and that I have a better theory, that the one realm is the physical realm? We could ask that question. And I did end up having that conversation with a guy named Houston Smith, who was the foremost religious studies professor in the country. He happened to be a neighbor of mine, and we became friends for a while, though it was a little touchy, because the first time we got together, I described how it's harder and harder to hold on to conviction, that humans these days are conviction impaired. And then a friend of mine said, hey, did you see that he quoted you in a book? And Houston Smith had just put out a new book, and he quoted me in it, and he quoted me wrong, and he knew he quoted me wrong. Slippery guy. He said that I came to him confessing that I was conviction impaired. It was not what I did. So I called him on it. I said, what the fuck? You know I didn't say that. This guy's about 90 by this time, and smug and religious as all get out. We ended up getting together for lunch. I invited him over for bangers and beer. And we get into this conversation about which comes first, matter or mattering, which is kind of yours and my question. So he said mattering or consciousness came first. And I said matter came first. But I actually meant the physical realm, not just matter, because we're not just built, there's not a solid material world, universe. And we are getting nowhere in this debate. So I said to him, well, can we change the subject to why two adults would have this debate? What would be in it for us? You arguing that consciousness is all there is, or consciousness comes first and creates matter, like God's consciousness, and me arguing that the physical world came first. Can we talk about what skin we have in that game? And he said to me, a very esteemed full professor, no, we cannot have that conversation. And I said, why not? And he said, because that would imply that I would have motivations to believe it, whereas I would think I'd rather believe that it's true and proven on faith. So we could have a shop talk, you and me, about F.J. Dolux. We could have a shop talk about what I get out of my beliefs and what you get out of your beliefs, if you were willing. And I would love to have that tomorrow. So let me just remind you all that if anybody wants to talk to me and give me a piece of their mind, including a ration of shit for all the talk I do, I'm here. I talk nonstop for an hour and a half. If you want to do that, come join me there tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I'll be there. We can talk about whatever is interesting to the most people there. If there's someone who's disappointed because other people don't want to talk about their subject, I will grant free, let's do a one-on-one. Let's just do that. I've been doing that with a few folks from here, just one-on-ones to talk through something that we could have talked through in the group, but the group wanted to talk about something else, so we didn't get around to it. Because I hate to wear out my welcome, and I hate to bore people, and I want to be useful to people, but not useful as a whipping boy, because I haven't proven to you that you're not right, and and therefore you're right by default. That's boring. All right, sweethearts. I'll give you a piece of my mind. Unsure Sherman. That's right. And I better demonstrate some unsureness. Here's how I'll do it. I've got some hand gestures for it. Okay. So one is I can stroke my beard, and I can say, Michael, you make a telling point. And then I can also do this. Oh, let's see. Gotta do it right. Michael, you make a telling point. That's a passive-aggressive version of it. Now you want to extend that. Remember the most important hand signal you'll ever get, which is, I have to pull back a little bit to pull this off, which is you pound the table, and then you gradually pull your hand back to, well, you're pounding something else. Confidence. That's that appetite for confidence. All right, sweethearts. I will see you again next time. I'm happy you're here. I'm grateful for this. I really am. The feistier, the better. It's good. I'm glad to be having these conversations where truth emerges from disagreements among friends. See you guys next time.